Good evening from the State of Kuwait. Welcome to the 7 o'clock news for Friday, the 27th of September 2014. I am Dalia Badran with the headlines for tonight. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah's representatives, His Highness the Prime Minister, left New York City after leading Kuwait's delegation to the UN General Assembly's 69th session. The IS militants besieging the Syrian town of Kobane on the Turkish border have been targeted by airstrikes. 2 killed in clashes between Houthis and troops loyal to Yemeni president in the capital Sana'a. Iranian president says that his country and 6 world powers made little progress in overcoming significant disagreements in the most recent round of nuclear talks. Hello and welcome. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah's representative, His Highness the Prime Minister Sheikh Jaber Al-Mubarak Al-Hamad Al-Sabah left New York City after leading Kuwait's delegation to the UN General Assembly's 69th session. His Highness the Prime Minister was seen off at John F. Kennedy Airport by Kuwait Ambassador to the U.S. Sheikh Salim Abdullah Al-Jaber Al-Sabah and Kuwait's permanent representative to the UN Mansour Al-Ataibi. His Highness the Prime Minister met during his stay in New York City with His Excellency the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, His Excellency the Iraqi President Fouad Masoom, His Excellency the Iraqi Prime Minister Haidar al-Abadi, and his Georgia counterpart Erkil Gabriel Vigil. The First Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Hamad Al-Sabah renewed Kuwait's condemnation and denunciation of all practices that exploit religion as a pretext for killing, displacement, or terrorizing innocent people. He also applauded the Security Council resolutions number 2170 and number 2178 on the fight against terrorism. Presiding the Kuwaiti delegation at the annual coordination meeting of the foreign ministers of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and on the sidelines of the 69th General Assembly of the United Nations, Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid said that the region is facing increasing acts of terrorism from the so-called Islamic groups, which their actions and deeds are far from Islam. Islam is a religion of tolerance and calls for the denunciation of killing, fanaticism, and the elimination of extremism and violence. He stressed on the need to exert more effort to inform the world of the message of our religion. The First Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Hamad Al-Sabah met the Algerian Foreign Minister Kamtan Al-Amara on the sidelines of the 69th session of the UN General Assembly. The two sides discussed ways to bolster bilateral relations as well as issues of mutual interest and other related issues to the UN General Assembly's agenda. The First Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Hamad Al-Sabah and European Union Foreign and Security Policy Chief Federica Mogherini co-chaired the GCC EU ministerial meeting in New York. The two officials also met the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, the Indian Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj, and South Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se. The meetings discussed ways to bolster the GCC-EU relations in all domains, especially in economy and investment. They exchanged views on regional and international issues of mutual interest. The GCC and the South Korean officials signed a memoranda of understanding over strategic cooperation in many domains, particularly trading, tourism, economy, energy, culture, sport, and education. The First Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Hamada Sabah held talks with the Turkish Foreign Minister Maulud Çavuşoğlu on a host of bilateral issues. The meeting, which was held on the sidelines of the 69th session of the UN General Assembly, also discussed issues of mutual interest. Kurdish fighters have been defending the Syrian town of Kobane from an advance by the Islamic militants, while airstrikes targeted the area today. However, there has been no word from the US-led coalition on whether it carried out airstrikes in the area. The European nations joined the widening air campaign against the IS militants in Iraq, led by the United States and supported by some Gulf nations. Our reporter Dina Nasser has more on this story.
IS fighters besieging the Syrian town of Kobane on the Turkish border were targeted by airstrikes today. Warplanes circled through last night and explosions were heard in the early hours of the morning. Overnight, the head of the US Armed Forces said airstrikes in Syria were damaging the group, but said air power alone was not enough to defeat the militants. The UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said airstrikes continued today in Syria, with IS targets in the central province of Homs hit for the first time. Strikes were also reported in the town of Minbej, east of Aleppo, for the first time, as well as new strikes on the city of Raqqa, which serves as IS headquarters. Yesterday, the United States launched a new wave of airstrikes against IS militants in Syria, marking a fifth consecutive day of aerial bombardment in the country. The mission is now similar to US-led air raids undertaken in Iraq, with near-continuous combat flight operations over Syria. Washington has been keen to not let Assad's forces exploit the air campaign against the IS to take the upper hand in the more than 3-year-old civil war. US Vice President Joe Biden held a bilateral meeting yesterday with Iraqi President Fouad Marsoum at the UN General Assembly in New York. In a brief statement following the meeting, Biden praised Marsoum for his leadership, both in the fight against IS militants and by playing a critical role to end the political crisis in Iraq. In response, Marsoum said he hoped that through cooperation with the international community, Iraq would be able to defeat the IS group, as well as other terrorist groups around the world. The United Kingdom and Belgium joined the US-led coalition of nations yesterday that are launching airstrikes on the militants in Iraq, committing warplanes to the struggle against the extremists. In further efforts to defeat IS militants, the Obama administration said it was considering establishing a no-fly zone over northeastern Syria. Meanwhile, Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Martin Dempsey indicated that they are open to considering Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's buffer zone along the Turkish-Syrian border, where tens of thousands of Syrians have sought refuge.
2 Yemeni rebels were killed today in clashes with troops loyal to President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi in the capital, which was largely overran last week by the Houthis. Fierce battles erupted last night near the presidential complex in southern Sana'a after Houthis attacked the nearby residence of the head of the national security apparatus. The attack took place a day after President Hadi urged the northern rebels to pull out of the capital, accusing them of raiding houses, military bases, and government institutions. Tension remains high in the district where Houthis and presidential guards were heavily deployed. PLO Executive Committee member Saad Araiqat said following President Abbas' address at the UN that a draft resolution was passed by Palestine and Arab states defining a time frame to end the Israeli occupation. Observers believe that the first step is to press on the international community to pass this resolution in 2 to 3 weeks. A united Palestinian stance, in addition to the joining of the international agreements and organizations, are also required to solve the crisis. More with our correspondent in Ramallah, Fatma Abdul Karim.
Following the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's address at the United Nations yesterday, PLO Executive Committee Saeb Ariqat said that the address will be the base for a draft resolution submitted by Palestine and the Arab states to end the Israeli occupation over the borders of 1967 within a time frame of 2 to 3 weeks.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, there is an occupation that must end now, and there is a people that must be liberated now. The time has come for the independence of Palestine, and I think you can hear the clock ticking.
The time-binding resolution to end the Israeli occupation on borders of 1967 will automatically bring into existence an independent Palestinian state. Observers believe that there are a set of preconditions that would be needed at this moment as the world takes its decision over the fate of the Palestinian state, such as a solid internal front and the joining of international organizations.
This could actually open up to a new platform on the international arena and in the face of the occupation. This requires a series of arrangements, topmost being the implementation of the international reconciliation, and secondly turning to international organizations, particularly the tools of implementing international law.
While this is seen as a critical and historical moment, the Palestinians are also preparing to see the worst by the Israeli government, whether through its army and military bodies or through its political and diplomatic bodies, before allowing Palestinians to see their independence. Fatma Abdul Karim, Kuwait TV, Ramallah, Palestine.
Thank you, Fatma. Iran's president said today that progress so far in nuclear talks with 6 major powers was not significant, and the pace must be sped up if the November 24th deadline for a final agreement is to be reached. Hassan Rouhani told a news conference that Iran will never accept any agreement that requires it to stop enriching uranium, and that sanctions by the US, the European Union, and the United Nations must be melted away. Talks between experts from the 6 powers and Iran was held on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly's ministerial meeting, but an expected meeting of foreign ministers was called off today. An Egyptian court has postponed the verdict in the retrial of former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak on charges of corruption and killing protesters during the 2011 uprising. The court today said the ruling for the 86-year-old Mubarak, who ruled Egypt for 3 decades, was postponed until November 29th due to the large amount of evidence. The verdicts for 7 of his former police commanders, as well as for his 2 sons, Ala and Jamal, accused of corruption, were also delayed. In the last session, Mubarak spoke out for the first time regarding the case, saying he would never order the killing of protesters. At least one person was killed and 14 others injured today when a bomb planted on a motorcycle exploded in a busy marketplace in southwest Pakistan's rest of Balochistan province. The bomb, detonated by a remote control device, was planted on a motorcycle parked near a busy vegetable market in Sibi, bordering Afghanistan. The blast also damaged motorcycles, shops, and vehicles parked nearby as security forces have cordoned off the blast site and a manhunt has been launched. Police, security forces, and rescue teams rushed to the site immediately following the blast and shifted the victims to hospitals where 3 of the wounded were in critical condition. According to the World Health Organization, the death toll from the Ebola outbreak in the West Africa has passed 3,000. The latest figures indicate that more than 6,500 people are believed to have been infected in the region. Liberia is the worst affected country, having recorded around 1,800 deaths linked to the latest outbreak. Some studies have warned that the numbers of the infected could rise to more than 20,000 by early November. Earlier, the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon convened a high-level meeting of world leaders in New York City to discuss measures to fight the spread of Ebola. Ban said the current Ebola crisis is the largest and most deadly Ebola outbreak the world has ever seen and called on all UN members to play an active role in coordinating efforts to combat the disease. Right, police in Hong Kong arrested today scores of students who stormed the government headquarters compound during a night of scuffles to protest China's refusal to allow genuine democratic reforms in the simultaneous city. To allow genuine democratic reforms in the semi-autonomous city. More than 100 other protesters, however, showed no sign of leaving the area surrounding the square where the government complex is located and chanted at police to stop arresting their colleagues. The dispersal followed a night of scuffles between police and about 150 protesters who forced their way into the government compound. A volcano erupted in central Japan today, catching mountain climbers by surprise and sending huge plumes of ash and stones into the sky, injuring at least one person. Mount Ontake spewed large amounts of plumes into the sky, sending people fleeing and covering surrounding areas in ash, causing injuries to several people, including one who was unconscious. Meanwhile, Japan Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says the army will help rescue some 150 climbers affected by the eruption. Japan's meteorological agency raised the alert level of Mount Ontake to 3 on a scale of 1 to 5 and warned people to stay away from the mountain, saying ash and other debris could fall up to 4 kilometers away. For a chance to see our reports again, please visit our YouTube channel at the MOI Kuwait News. Before we end, here is a quick reminder of today's headlines. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah's representative, His Highness the Prime Minister, left New York City after leading Kuwait's delegation to the UN General Assembly's 69th session. The IS militants besieging the Syrian town of Kobain on the Turkish border have been targeted by airstrikes. 2 killed in clashes between Houthis and troops loyal to Yemeni president in the capital Sana'a. Iranian president says that his country and 6 world powers made little progress in overcoming significant disagreements in the most recent round of nuclear talks.